I made this game in 8 months. Well, not really 8 months, because I've been honing my craft since I was a junior in high school, so should I retitle this to I made this game in 9 years? No, because that doesn't get rage clicks. Now onto the video. 8 months ago, I was playing Risk of Rain 2, and I thought, man, I wish there was a non-gacha game like this for phones. I checked the Play Store and couldn't find anything that fit what I wanted. For iOS users, imagine the App Store but with more crime. I wanted something with Risk of Rain 2's roguelike progression and RNG negation. You know, you pick up items, and then you can scrap the printed ones you don't want into the ones that you do. It needed to be something casual, no warlocks or special ops soldiers, things that are natural enemies, like monkeys and balloons. And eventually, I landed on cats and rats, even though cats actually hate mice, but that doesn't really roll off the tongue as well. I didn't want it to be first person, third person, or really anything that required aiming, because I despise aiming on a phone. And no, I'm not going to be seen in public playing on my phone with a controller. Finally, no stupid f***ing gacha garbage. No in-game purchases, no coins, gems, V-Bucks, or anything else. Just a fun game to kill some time when I'm forced to be away from my computer. You might be thinking, you definitely showed a desktop game in the beginning. Did I get tricked into watching a video on a mobile game? Well, astute viewer, that's the conflict and rising action part of this video, and we are currently in the exposition. So why don't you wait for me to get there? I got to work, and like most game devs know, the beginning was super fast and fun. Movement, easy. Items spawning from chests like in Risk of Rain, functioning perfectly. And all of it just worked. It just worked.
I'm not kidding.
That was until the reality of making a mobile game set in. See, my philosophy and dev patterns are that I can make things work, and later on I can optimize. However, mobile dev is a completely different beast, and I am not someone who works well with a frame budget. What is a frame budget, you may ask? I actually just thought of the term, and it probably has an actual official meaning. I'm just not currently at liberty to Google that, so let me explain. My game has many elements that demand processing every frame. Examples are like physics calculations, enemy navigation, and player movement input. All this stuff needs to be figured out by your device's CPU, except for stuff that can be done in a parallel fashion, like your fragment operations particle system. That's your GPU. In a desktop application, it's nowhere near as big of an issue because you can have crazy amounts of TDP. TDP is basically an average of heat your CPU will put out and needs to have cooled down. My current desktop processor has a 65 watt TDP, while the one in my phone averages around 4 to 6 watts. That means mobile CPUs have around a tenth of the power budget compared to their desktop counterparts. If you're about to comment, actually, that's wrong because of blah, 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 facts, blah, 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 about any of the stuff I said, then please know I already portrayed you as the soy jack, so you're automatically the loser of the argument. All that being said, the whole make it work and then optimize thing doesn't really work as well when a basic player and block enemy drops the game down to 15 FPS. I started being more efficient and thinking about optimization whilst developing features. For enemy navigation, rather than have them get the player's location every frame, why not every second or so and just lerp it? Do the enemies really need to have moving legs with baked animation and a whole skeleton? The player's not even going to be able to see that on a phone. After some basic optimization, around late July, the game was really starting to shape up. I had a cohesive product that almost felt like an actual game. A menu, some character weapon and difficulty selection, a final boss, and sounds. I enlisted a bunch of friends and friends of friends to test the game on their Android devices, and I was naively expecting resounding praise and pats on the back and my little feedback spreadsheet I put together.
Oh shit, here we go again.
Instead, it was almost entirely bug reports. Issues with nearly every facet. Performance was bad, game crashes, final boss crashes, phones getting super hot, lag spikes, UI inconsistencies. I triaged as I could with some issues and attributed others to game design, getting things to a mostly playable state. A notable exception was the final boss. I was never quite able to figure out why he continued to crash every single device, every single time, because of what came next. I also had a dichotomous feeling of joy and misery. My players had begun speedrunning my game and keeping notes on strategies. They actually cared and, most of all, enjoyed the game enough to play it to that level. So what's miserable about that, you may ask? Well, they weren't speedrunning beating the game, or making it to a high round, or anything else. They were speedrunning getting the game to crash. Here are the final times. As I was triaging that last large looming bug, I was doing research on how to market this thing that by this point I've spent nearly 5 months working on, and I came across a Reddit thread about mobile game marketing. In this thread and others like it, the overwhelming majority opinion I found was either you need a massive budget for paid marketing or an already successful desktop product with name recognition, of which I had neither. So I made the difficult decision of informing the playtesters and fans who took hours and hours out of their lives to playtest on mobile that the game was no longer coming to that very platform, and would instead be releasing on Steam. To say the meltdown was cataclysmic would be an understatement. Nah, I'm just kidding. The 6 or so people that playtested for me were pretty ambivalent to the whole thing. So the swap began. The control changes were relatively quick. It was just swapping the on-screen joystick to WASD. On the flip side, however, this transition allowed for some awesome stuff. The enemies could think and do way more each frame. I could use the higher-end godot renderer and have pretty stuff like glow, fog, and depth of field. And more build crafting, since playthroughs could be done in front of a computer over a long segment instead of in 5-minute phone increments. All that culminated with the official release of the Steam page and the first version of the demo on desktop in early August or so. I'd heard stories on Reddit of developers releasing their demo and being organically propelled up to thousands and thousands of wishlists. After the release of mine, I'm proud to say it went from around 16 wishlists to 54. So with that disappointment under my belt, I went back to the drawing board. I realized the UI super sucked, so I completely overhauled it. There wasn't much incentive to actually play more of the game, so I added cosmetics and added some meme ones to build some traction on social media. Spoiler alert, none of those really amounted much in terms of wishlists. I think that definitely could have improved if I kept at it. This is all in anticipation of the October Steam Next Fest, which allows the ability for upcoming games with demos to gain visibility and eyes that they otherwise wouldn't be able to in the literal sea of over 100,000 games. Disclaimer, the pool of Next Fest games was still massive. I think it was around 3,000 games that participated this year. I knew going in that Next Fest tends to be multiplicative, so if you don't enter with too many wishlists, then you won't get nearly as many as another game that did. So October 13th dawned and it was the first day of Next Fest, and I could not stop refreshing my wishlist counter. First 100 wishlists, then 150, then 200. It was so exciting, and if this rate kept up, I'd be at nearly 2,000 by the end of Next Fest. Some reference to that number, from what I've read and gleaned from other developers online, it's important to make it to around 5,000 or 6,000 before you release your game, so it ends up on the popular upcoming tab of Steam and it gains that crucial visibility that you need. Unfortunately, that rate of wishlist did not keep up. On the third day of Next Fest, Steam will always pick games that are doing better and begin pushing those over other titles, which is different from the first 2 days where all games are pushed equally. So unfortunately, a lot of well-established IPs and established studios kind of started taking over, like Star Trek Voyager, Across the Unknown, Cairn, Power Wash Simulator 2, and Marvel Cosmic Invasion. And don't take that the wrong way, I don't want to sound like, wah, my game's amazing, big greedy companies bullied small indie baby out of deserved wishlists, because that's simply not true. I recognize there were way, way better games out there than mine. I wanted to show some examples of those very games. Some of them were Swap Meet, Hard Void, Final Sentence, Yap Yap, and Lort. Those are just some of them, there were way more. Overall, I ended Steam Next Fest with around 500 wishlists, which isn't a ton relative to others, but I was just happy to have that many. They say comparison is the thief of joy, and I had a very hard and very real lesson during that same Next Fest. Just after Next Fest, I added controller support and began branding my game as more of a casual, my first roguelike to get cozy cat game fans into the genre, which is a great example of why you should be defining these things before you've already built out systems, but that's advice for people smarter than I am. That pretty much gets us to the present. The game is set to release on November 21st on Steam. Over the last few weeks, I've also been finding streamers, YouTubers, and games journalists who play and cover games like mine, and I'm going to be sending keys out to all of them over the next week. So if you're someone who plays indies, roguelikes, or cozy cat games, or just want to play it on your channel, doesn't matter how small or big you are, shoot me your contact info to the email in the description, and I'll send you a key. So now we get to the part of the video where I come to a conclusion, everybody's supposed to learn a lesson, and I pad this out to 10 minutes for ad revenue. I'd be lying if I said I'll just be happy to have released a game and the money doesn't matter to me. I think everyone who creates something hopes their creation will be loved by others. I also think it's hard to be objective about your own creation on both sides of the objectivity spectrum. Sometimes I look at it and think, how could anyone enjoy this? It's not as good as other awesome roguelikes like Risk of Rain or Mega Bonk. And other times I think, it's the perfect intro to roguelikes. It's fun and has the perfect cute factor. How could this not blow up? I'm not really sure what I'm trying to say here, but I think if there's anything to be taken from this video, besides the fact that people should give me money and buy my game on Steam, self-plug, it's to maybe go easy on game devs and creatives as a whole. Is it crazy for me to expect or even hope for my game to blow up? Honestly, probably yes. But I've also spent 8 or 9 months now with what is basically my quote-unquote child, so I can't help but see it for every brushstroke, tribulation, breakthrough, and late night I've put into it. And ultimately, players are only going to see it for the sum of its parts. But those players are paying their hard-earned money for it, so they're entitled to see it for what they're getting. Is either viewpoint wrong? I don't know, and I don't think so. I could go back and forth on this for hours, but I think it's important for players and devs to think about each other's viewpoints before, writing that Steam review or responding to that player feedback. Thanks for watching. I'm going to keep posting game dev videos on this channel and maybe check out some other indie devs games, so if you like that kind of thing or you want your game checked out, subscribe or like or do the other things that you're supposed to do on YouTube.